Okay, this is another video in the Forbidden Lands set, and this one's going to talk about conditions and damage and other forms of impairment. So let's get into it. Okay, so when a character is exploring the Forbidden Lands, they can come to harm in a lot of different ways, and let's talk through at a high level what some of those ways are. They can gain a condition by simply not having been warm, not having enough to drink, not having eaten, not having rested. They can be poisoned by horrible monsters or by bad food. They can suffer a range of other special damage conditions. They can be they can take damage from pushing their skills. They can be stabbed, bashed, or pierced by some weapon, and they can suffer horror, which is where some monster has terrified them to the point where they're broken human beings. So we're going to talk about each of these in order. So let's talk about conditions first. Right, so a condition and is being either hungry, thirsty, sleepy, or cold. So if I go to the character sheet, and we're using the Roll20 character sheets, we're using good old Radis again, I can be hungry, I can be sleepy, I can be thirsty, and I can be cold. That is a very bad thing. The way I become hungry is by not having eaten for a day. The way I become sleepy is by not having rested for a day. The way I become thirsty is by not having had anything to drink for a day. And the way I become cold is by suffering extreme cold, often when I'm sleeping. But I imagine if I'd played the Bitter Reach, which I have not, there are many other ways I could acquire a cold. So, what does that mean? A condition has a bunch of different impacts. And look, the player's guide talks about each one in detail. I've got them in this flowchart just for the sake of discussion. But let's use hungry as an example. You must eat a ration of food once per day. If you go without, then you become hungry. If you're hungry, you can't recover strength in any way except for magic, which means if I've taken damage to my strength from a weapon or from pushing, I can't improve it unless someone casts a spell on me to heal me. Also, I once per week will take one additional point of damage. And if I'm broken when I'm hungry and I go without food for another week, then I die. However, it's relatively easy to recover from most conditions. I just need to do the thing that started the condition, or rather, I need to do the thing that would return me from the condition. So if I'm hungry, I need to eat. If I'm thirsty, I need to drink. If I'm sleepy, I need to sleep. And if I'm cold, actually cold might be the exception. You may just need to get warm. Okay, so then we've got thirsty, which is where I don't get water. Nasty stuff. Can't recover any attribute except through magic. You suffer 1 point of damage to both strength and agility every day while you're thirsty. And if I become broken in any stat, so if my strength or my agility hits 0 in either stat, then I will die if I go another day without water. And note that if I'm no longer thirsty, then I can recover my attributes normally, which is normally done through rest. Sleepy, same story. I can't recover wits. However, I suffer 1 point per day, and if this damage breaks your wits, you collapse and sleep for at least 1/4 day. So if I'm pushing myself, then I won't die from it. Rather, I'll just collapse into exhaustion and then wake up several hours later, having recovered. Cold is nasty. Okay, so I have to roll endurance. I take a point of damage, and if I fail, I take a point of damage to both strength and wits. I can hallucinate, and I have to keep on rolling endurance on a regular basis, and I can't recover strength or wits until I'm warmed up again. So the trick there is to find warmth. Right, if I've taken damage from poison, so if we just go back, we did talk about poison. Poison has an effect where I get a full effect or I get a limited effect. So what happens when I'm poisoned is the GM rolls a number of dice equal to the potency of the poison. So if it's a 6 potency poison, they would roll 6 dice. And I roll, as the player, my endurance. We compare the two. If I nullify all their successes, then it's a limited effect. If they win if they get one more success than me, then it's full effect. So each poison has a different effect. So full effect, might take 1 point of damage to strength each round until you're broken. Your critical injury counts as non-typical, and I can drink an antidote, at which point it's stopped. If I only took limited effect, I only take 1 point of damage to strength. If I was paralyzed, I take 1 point of agility. Once the agility reaches 0, I'm obviously unable to move. However, if I fail, I take 1 point to my agility. If it's a sleeping one, I take 1 point each round until I'm broken, and then I fall unconscious for D6 hours. I don't suffer a critical effect, and the non-typical critical table is a very small table. If I get limited, then I take 1 point of damage to wits. Full effect from a hallucinogen is I take 1 point of damage to empathy, and I'm hallucinating. In addition, if I make the limited effect, I take 1 point of damage to empathy. So just to go over the basics again, potency gets rolled by the GM, endurance gets rolled by the player. If the GM gets more successes than the player, it's full effect. If the player gets more successes or it knocks out all the successes of the GM, then it's partial effect or limited effect. You can put poison on your weapons, and it will stay there for a quarter of a day. It takes an action to do so. I should point out a fumble or a critical fail with a poisoned weapon would probably not be a good thing, and it would be it's unlikely the GM would not take advantage of such a thing. Okay, so now we're going to talk about other. Okay, so the other is drowning, disease, and falling. So I can take damage from a lot of different sources, and these are just the ones that are called out in the rules. The landslide mishap is another example of another form of damage that you can take. If you're swimming, you need to make an endurance roll every turn to stay afloat. If you're wearing metal armor, it's every round, so bad to wear metal armor and go swimming. If you fail, you start to sink, and then you must make an endurance roll every round to hold your breath. If you fail that roll, then you will start to drown, and you will take 1 point of damage for strength for each round until someone dives into the water and pulls you out. So basically, you will die very quickly once you start to drown, and if you become broken, you just die after D6 minutes. Disease works a little bit like poison. It's got something called a virulence. So virulence strength 3 means it rolls 3 dice. Virulence strength 6 means it rolls 6 dice. You roll your endurance against it. If you are defeated, you fall sick. And when you fall sick, it depends on the type of sickness. There's a whole range of different effects. Finally, falling. Good old falling. If you fall more than 3 meters, the GM will roll for an attack. They roll a number of dice equal to the height of the fall, minus 2. So if you fell 3 meters, you would roll 1 dice. If you fell 6 meters, you would roll 4 dice. For every success, you take 1 point of damage to strength again, and your armor does not protect you. However, if you've got someone with healing skill, they can actually roll their skill instead of yours to try and stop you from taking the damage. So instead of you rolling endurance, they roll healing skill to stop the disease affecting you. Okay, now just talking through some of the last little bits. Right, we've talked about this in the skills section, so we're not going to treat it in great detail. If you're pushing, you take damage to the stat used. So if I'm pushing my wits and I get a bane, then I take damage to wits. However, if I break as a result of pushing, I suffer no critical. And to heal, if I'm not yet broken, so say I've got wits 4 and I've taken 2 points of wits damage, that's not broken, so I haven't reached 0 yet. I have to rest, and if I rest, I recover all of my stats, so I will go back up to 4. Or someone has to use the spell Healing Hands to heal me, which explicitly heals strength and agility damage, 1 per power point. The same rules apply for wits and empathy. If I'm not broken, then I can rest, or I can use Cleanse the Spirit to heal. Sorry, that was strength and agility I was talking about earlier. If I am broken, then I can use the skill. Yay! So if I'm broken, if my stat reaches 0 as a result of pushing, then the healing skill can be used to recover points in strength and agility, 1 per success, and for wits and empathy, it's performance. So just really pay attention to this very specific statement. I cannot use my skill to heal someone who is not yet broken. So if someone is down 2 points of wits out of their total of 3, so they're currently operating on 1 wits, I cannot use my performance skill to heal them. They can rest, and they can use magic, but they can't use the skill. If I'm stabbed, bashed, or pierced, in other words, if some combat damage occurs to me, pretty much the same rules apply. If I'm broken, the big difference is, however, if I break, I can and will roll on the critical tables. So that is a big difference. And as a matter of fact, if we go to the critical tables, which are right here, sorry, I went to the wrong one, and I'll just make it a bit bigger so you can see what I'm seeing, fit to width. Then I roll a d6, and if it was a slash wound, I roll a d6 on this particular table, and it could be everything from a bleeding forehead, which has no effect of any form, really, it's just for colour and light, all the way through to my head leaves my body because I've been decapitated, a la Kurgan and Highlander. So pay attention to whether it is a push or actually damage that's being done to you, because the difference is quite significant. However, from a recovering hit points perspective, if I'm not broken, then I can use healing hands. If I am broken, then I can use healing skill. Now, just to note, that's all strength damage. When we talk about wits, what you'll realise very quickly is there's no way to fix a critical injury in the game. So I can't use magic and I can't use my skills. I can only recover the points. I can't recover the actual critical. Whereas in the stabbing, bashing and piercing space, where I've taken a critical to a stat of strength, then if the critical was fatal, I can use healing skill or the mend wounds spell with a power of 2 to heal. If I'm non-fatal, then I can roll the healing skill. If it's a non-fatal critical, the healing skill, or I can use mend wounds P1 to heal. Okay, and then there's just one last thing. So I was touching on it a second ago. So with horror, which is based usually result of a fear attack, I take wits damage instead of strength damage from the attack. If I'm not broken, I can rest or use cleanse spirit to heal. If I am broken, I can use performance skill and rest or use cleanse spirit. And I will just quickly go to the very nasty. Hold on, where is it going? It's gone. I've closed it. Okay, don't worry about it. If I roll the wits critical table, what you'll notice when I got it is I can't actually use skill to recover, and if it's fatal, it's instantly deadly. Okay, so that is how damage works in the game. Thanks very much.